Hello, I'm Dr. Maha Al-Ugaily, a lecturer at the Department of Architecture at Al-Nahrain University in Iraq, and I'm here to talk to you about my paper, Synaesthetic Scape, Methods of Creating a Virtual Architectural Experience. This paper is derived from my Ph.D. project, which was called Synaesthetic Scape, which was part of a Ph.D. by Design program which took place at the School of Architecture at the University of Sheffield in UK. This research article draws attention to the sensory experience of architecture, whereby all different sensory aspects of the built environment work together to stimulate and communicate with the user's senses. The research disseminates a new term of synaesthetic scape, which describes this experience, and it's also the title of a virtual landscape constructed as part of the research by design process. Architecture is understood in this article as the embodiment of human sensory interaction with an individual's environment through time and a way of holding users' stories of sensory interaction and perception. However, representations of architecture have tended to have been limited to expressing the visual interactions with the surrounding environment, ignoring the comprehensive effect of the sensory experience of users in understanding and perceiving their surroundings. This research project is attempting to develop the concept of synaesthetic scape by combining synesthesia with a spatial experience in architecture by the use of the recent technology of virtual reality. What is synesthesia? Synesthesia means the union of the senses in clinical terms. Synesthesia is a neurological condition in which stimulation of one sense produces experiences in a totally different sense. Architecture theorist Marco Frascari introduced the term synesthesia to architecture in his discussion of architect Carlos Carapaz's drawings in 2003, and later in his book, 11 Exercises and the Art of Architectural Drawings in 2011. Frascari emphasizes that synesthesia is not a neurological disorder. It's simply a different way to experience the world. Frascari defines synesthesia as the crossing of the senses. For Frascari, sensory perceptions in synesthesia is an emotional state of affairs that is difficult to describe. The article constructs the notion of synaesthetic scape as an experience of space where sensory associations, perceptions, and emotions are all blended together in a virtual immersive medium. The architect Juhani Pallasmaa, on the other hand, has a slightly different perspective to this understanding. He warns that the sensory and spatial experience of architecture can come limited when focusing on the medium of graphical drawings or other symbolic, photographic, conceptual, or intellectual representations. He's critical of architecture, which alienates us from our environment by displacing design as a multisensory interaction with static drawings that favor the visual sense. In particular, Pallasmaa is critical of computer imaging. This research article builds on the ideas of both Frascari and Pallasmaa in regard to architectural representations and experience. It contends with Pallasmaa's theory that contemporary architecture is static and denies the real nature of human sensory perception. It further explores the potentials of synesthesia as a cross-sensory model for a virtual environment, an environment that allows for the sensory experiences of users when moving in and around virtual architecture. The research aims to contribute to the design palette of architecture and the design process in general through the development of immersive virtual reality tools for use in enhancing architecture as a sensory experience of place. Thus, the objectives of this research can be summarized through these two areas. A three-stage framework was designed with the aim of answering the research question, which was how to design in a synesthetic way. Each stage has its design synesthetic experiment. This framework uses the experimental inquiry approach as a tool to operate these three experiments. This approach involves a process of generating and testing hypotheses for the purpose of understanding and exploring the designing of the newly proposed synaesthetic scape. Therefore, each stage has its own hypothesis to test and questions to answer through a design synaesthetic methodology and test, which in turn has informed the subsequent stage. The synaesthetic methodology that identifies each of the three components and evaluates the results by the users experiencing the space. In order to identify and evaluate each component, the following actions were carried out. Perception of the users was identified by asking them to draw a map for the space as they perceive it. Sensory associations in each stage, more than one sense was provoked, with users asked to take a semi-structured interview to talk about their sensory experience of the space. Emotions were detected in different stages of the experiment, in different circumstances, and were accordingly evaluated by the participants in a semi-structured interview that took place afterwards. Stage 1, sound space, hypothesis and questions. The initial stage in the design of the first synaesthetic scape is referred to here as sound space. There are 4 animated works of interior architecture. This project was my master's project, which was submitted in 2002 for the MA Art and Space at Kingston University in London, UK. This Ph.D. research pilot study tested sound space, which represents an early example of the synaesthetic scape. The hypothesis for this stage was that a synaesthetic scape experience can be achieved by tuning the design tools of light, colors, textures, and materials, which are believed to influence the mood in the space, emulating any real architectural experience. The subsequent 2 questions related specifically to the sound space was, what are the right levels of light, color, materials, and textures influencing the emotional engagement of participants within the space? The second question was, to what extent can music be used to provoke emotions in order to create the emotional aspect of the synaesthetic experience? Stage 1, quantitative method, nature of data collected. As I mentioned before, my participants has to watch the 4 animated works I've done in my master's degree. So I had to record their facial video recordings while they're watching the videos in 3 different stages. The first stage was just listening to the music to get the emotions detected from listening to music only. The second stage was looking at the design without any sound, without music, to elicit emotions from being engaged with the design. And the third stage was, of course, watching the whole animation with the design and the music attached to it to be able to elicit emotions from the whole experience.
Okay, Dr. Maha, can you pause that?
Facial video recordings were translated into tables of each individual.
For a second? Yeah. So we already passed about 10, 12 minutes. So you want to continue it without questions? That's fine. I see that you recorded 15 minutes on the screen. So you want to continue it like this without questions, or it's up to you?
Well, the whole paper is around the methods and the way it's done. So if you want me, well, you can sense them. You can sense the atmosphere around you. If there are questions that are going to be directed to me, I would be happy to take them. If there are no questions,
well,
so I would like to
session
proceed.
in the session here, we have this audience right now. But if there is nothing, you can continue the tape. I don't see. Good.
Okay, thank you.
There is one question. There is one question in the room. There is one question in the room.
Yes, I'm ready to answer that question.
Okay, let's have the question and then you decide for the continuation of the tape, right?
Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Maha, for your interest subject. And just I want to understand, just to check if there is a relationship between synesthesia and energy or not. Energy.
Energy. So would you say
Yeah.
that again? What about energy?
Energy, if there is relationship with your subject and energy or neuroscience.
No,
There's
not at all. No, it's about architectural drawings and perception of the virtual environments.
Yes, yes.
So let's see if the online attendants have any questions, or we give you additional 2 minutes to jump to your conclusions of results and conclusions of your recording. Okay, can you, Dr. Maha, go to your results and conclusions last 2 minutes? As much as you can.
Okay, I'll leave you with the last last 2 minutes of the interview with the last 2 minutes of the video. That would be okay.
Okay. That's good.
All right. Into my computer, ready for analysis and discussion in the semi-structured interview that I was mentioning before. So the nature of data collected in this stage is a bit different. I had the first diagram up that shows the arousal levels of the stress or excitement or engagement of my participants before they are exposed to the virtual environment. The diagram below shows their emotional engagement while they are inside the virtual environment. And these are clips of their journey inside the virtual environment. And this is a sketch of the way they perceived it. Later on, Synaesthetic Scape insights and recommendations informed the next stage, which is stage 3. In stage 3, I have to do the same things, work and edit, evaluate the virtual environment, taking in regards the recommendations and insights I got from the last stage. And then these are the same data collected again for the third stage. Extra, I have this sketch that they have to sketch the environment as they remember it from the previous time, and then they go through the experience, and then they sketch it again. And as you can see, that the perception of the space has evolved and deepened. After going through these 3 accumulated stages, new themes has been shown, and things I have to take in consideration while doing further research. Thank you very much for listening. It was a great pleasure to be with you today.